What happens first? Belief that something will happen, or belief in something, and it's true? Or does the result that is being sought or seeking to be proved before belief will happen take place, and then you believe, or the people believe? Belief in the result, or result in the belief? So it can happen both ways. In some instances, there are stories of people who never believed that they would achieve a certain level of success or prosperity, and they were just doing something that they loved, and they get to a place that they never imagined, and they talk about how they never believed such a thing would happen, that they would never be in such a place, that they would never have such bounty bestowed upon them. And then there are those who believed from the very beginning, before they had what some would say any right to believe. Certainly where no one believed, and yet where that someone was the only one who had faith, and what they had desired to have happen as an outcome took place. I remember reading when I was a kid, real young. I'm talking about, I must have been 10 or 11, and my brother got me this awesome gift. Who would think? A 9-year-old, I guess he would have been 9 at the time, 8 or 9, he gets me this book from the local bookstore, Arnold, The Education of a Bodybuilder. Man, we loved, when we were kids growing up, we loved pro wrestling. Loved it. WWF, now the WWE, but WWF back then. Loved wrestling. I loved it. Loved the powerful figures. They were big. They were strong. I really admired that. The bodybuilders, the really big, strong physiques, they spoke to me. Comic books of heroes spoke to me. Just those gargantuan, larger-than-life figures that could move mountains. I loved it. It inspired me, even as a kid. I wanted to be a muscle man. So my brother buys me this book, Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Education of a Bodybuilder, and I read this thing cover to cover. I'm fascinated by it. I wish I still had the original book, but I remember it as clear as day. I remember what it looked like, I remember what it felt like. And Arnold would talk about in this book how he would see in his mind how he would win the competition, how he would win the contest, how he would be standing on stage with the trophy, how he would see himself with the physique that he wanted, if I remember correctly. All these things he would see in his mind first, and he talked about practicing visualization and how he would visualize these things and how they would ultimately happen. And certainly at the time, in the 70s, I believe this idea of visualization was catching on. It was a big thing. And I remember reading into the 80s, especially in the bodybuilding magazines, how important it was to visualize. Frank Zane was another big proponent, another top bodybuilder of the time, Mr. Olympia. I believe he won 3 Mr. Olympias, if I'm correct. And Frank Zane he was big into visualization and seeing and even dreaming. He would talk about lucid dreaming and about being able to control your dreams and how these dreams would manifest for him or predict for him what would happen. I've always been huge on belief since I was a kid. I remember my grandfather, Franco, affectionately known as Artie to those who loved him and who he loved. He was, man, I'll tell you what, he was a big proponent of belief. He gave me this poem when I was a kid about the man who thinks he can. And He had me read that over and over again. He even cut it out of a book or a newspaper, and he underlined certain things, and he gave it to me. And if I remember the ending of the poem is, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering it. But it was such a great poem, such a great allegory for life. Too many people want the outcome before they believe. They need to see proof in order for it to be real to them. And so they never accomplish anything in life, because unless it's put in front of them, front and center, plain as day, such that you can't mistake it, it's unmistakable. You have to touch it, you have to see it, it has to be concrete. Only then will you believe. Such that they go through their whole life never believing in anything and never really having anything of substance, anything of greatness. And maybe I was fortunate that I understood the power of belief from a very early age. But as I got older, I became a skeptic. I became on some things a contrarian. There were times when I was a complete believer in Yahusha, and became an atheist, became a believer again. This world and the illusion that it is, the mirage that it is, will twist you inside and out, and it'll warp your mind. But if you can go back to first principles, and for me those first principles were the power of belief, the majesty, the glory of belief, and how what you believe is real. It's very real. And for those who don't believe, but results or prosperity or bounty and blessings of life befall them, this can happen. You don't necessarily have to believe in an outcome for it to happen. But let me tell you what this results in, and what I see and what I hear over and over again when I question people, very successful people. I interview a lot of high achievers. I interview a lot of them. I have a podcast called the Alpha Human Podcast where I interview and I have conversations with super high achievers, a lot of them in the special forces, a lot of special operators, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Delta Force. You want to talk about top performers, look to these guys. The things that they're able to accomplish are mind-boggling. But there are a number of them, and I've heard this before from athletes, I've heard this from superstars in film, in industry, less so in industry, but more so in film and in music. And certainly I've been hearing it as well from some of the top warriors. They'll talk about fear of success. And what you'll hear when you really dive, what is fear of success? And what ends up happening for a lot of people who might not believe, but the outcomes that they're seeking actually occur for them, even though they're not sure if it'll ever happen. Athletes who set out to win a championship, and they win the championship, but weren't ever sure if they were going to win the championship, take home the belt, the accolade, the trophy, be the best in the world. They weren't necessarily sure, but it happens through sheer force of will. They make it happen, and what ends up resulting, or the side effect or after effect for a lot of these people, a lot of these high achievers, a lot of these individuals, is that they get what's known as imposter syndrome. Actually, I take it back. You do see a lot of this in industry as well. you'll hear something called imposter syndrome, which is you've landed the big job, you've won the championship belt, you're the best in the world, you're an elite warrior, and now what? Now you have to live up to these expectations that you're not sure you can live up to. And so that's fear of success. But alternatively, there's also this imposter syndrome for people that weren't ever sure that they were going to get where they were going, but they got there, and now they're like, do I really deserve this? I mean, I landed the big job, I'm in the big chair, I'm on the stage, but how did I fool all these people? They think I'm so great, but it's just me. And you'll question yourself whether or not you really deserve it, whether or not you're really as good as people think. That's imposter syndrome. And so what I'm laying out for you is that what happens when you don't believe first, but you get the result because you worked damn hard to make it happen. So you don't necessarily, so again, from the very beginning, I've said, what happens first? Is it belief and then the result, or does the result happen and then you believe? For a lot of people, they don't necessarily believe something is going to happen, but they work like heck to get there. They push themselves to the limit, not knowing whether or not the result will take place, and then it happens. But here's the thing, when you don't have belief from the very beginning, you end up with imposter syndrome. Never really being sure if you're good enough, or if you're in the right place, or if people are going to figure you out one day, that you're not really who you said you were. You went by that mantra, fake it till you make it. Act as if. I was a big proponent of this. I used to, when talking on success and how to succeed when you don't have confidence, when you don't have belief, I used to talk about how you should act as if you have belief, and eventually you'll get belief. I used to talk about that whole concept of fake it till you make it, but I just called it act as if. Act as if you're in the position, and eventually you'll be in the position. It'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's the thing, what I've learned over time from interviewing others and reading the biographies of those who have succeeded, or listening to the stories and the testimonies of people who didn't necessarily believe, but got where they had eventually wanted to end up going, they'll tell you they're not sure, and they're not ever sure, no matter how many years they're sitting in the seat of power, or sitting in the place where they had hoped to get to, or standing on that big stage, or walking around with that trophy. They almost never get to that place where they truly feel comfortable in their own skin. They're never at that place, at the top of that mountain, where they truly feel like they deserve to be there. It's because they didn't have belief from the start. And so they end up with this imposter syndrome. Much better to have belief first, because then when you get there, you feel like you always knew that it was going to happen, such that you feel right when it does. You feel comfortable in your skin when it does. Belief is a powerful thing. And a lot of us, and then there's this in-between place, which is the worst thing in the world to be. It's what I mentioned earlier. It's those who want to see things, want to hold things, want to touch things, want to feel the concrete nature of things before they ever believe. These are the people that never achieve anything. So there are those who don't necessarily believe it can happen, or those that aren't sure whether or not it can happen, but they work like heck anyway to get there because they love what they're doing, or they want what they're going after so bad that even if they fail at it, they don't care, but they're going to chase it. And when it happens, again, you end up with imposter syndrome, but they get where they were seeking to get to. Then there are those that believe from the very beginning. They could see it in their mind, they envision it, they know it in their bones, they feel it in their DNA. And they get there. They get there, ultimately. But they're comfortable in their skin. They know they deserve it. They feel right when it happens because they had faith from the very beginning that it was meant to be. They saw it in their mind's eye. They had the vision. They had the vision that it was possible. and the vision turned out to be correct. In both of those cases, again, from me and from everything I've read, from everything I've seen, those who believe first end a better deal because they feel right and true. They feel comfortable with the position that they've attained. They know it's right, they feel it intrinsically, and they have strength, peace, solace, and confidence. Those who get where they're going but never thought they would get there, but they got there out of sheer force of will, again, they end up with imposter syndrome, never being fully comfortable that they deserve what they got. But then, like I said, there's this middle ground. This is the worst. Those that need to have it proven to them before they'll ever believe, or before they'll ever before they'll ever stake a claim to it, before they'll ever set out to go after it, before they'll ever put any skin in the game. They'll act like they need to, like the only way I'm gonna set out on this path is if I know it can be done. As if this is something you're due. As if this is something that you're owed. I'm only going to believe it, or I'm only going to go after it, or I'm only going to try it if I know it's real. I have to see someone else do it first. Right? So you'll never be an innovator that way. You'll never be a creator. You'll never be an entrepreneur. You'll never be a pioneer. You'll never be a maverick. You'll never be someone who sets out on their own path. You'll never be a trailblazer. It's a terrible mindset to have. A terrible mindset to have. That the world owes you proof before you set out on your way, before you ever try anything, before you ever take a leap. For those people that need proof first, they end up never getting anywhere in life. They end up never climbing any mountains. They never end up taking any long roads. They never end up going on any interesting journeys. It could be because of insecurity. It could be because of fear. It could be because of cynicism. It could be for many, many reasons. But ultimately, it's the road to nowhere. Belief. Of all three of those things, belief is clearly the most potent power source. Belief and faith is clearly the best way, the most effective way, the greatest way, the surest way to the truth. How about that? How about that? Because what you believe is the truth. Because what you believe will ultimately be. Because what you believe, what you have faith in, is what manifests. We live in an illusion. We live in a mirage, a hallucination that's typically spun by the persuaders and the influencers of this world. A lot of them, most of them, corruptors, evildoers, misleaders, and deceivers that lead you down decadent pathways, defiled and debased journeys, having you chasing your tail for cheap thrills, cheap highs, and cheap titillation, endlessly pleasure-seeking, hedonistic, and gluttonous, trying to squeeze the juice out of life. And what do you think the juice out of life is? You get fooled into thinking the juice out of life is all this partying, all this celebration, all this revelry, all of this instant gratification in the accoutrements of comfort and the luxury lifestyle. The sweet tastes of the pleasures of the flesh. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is discipline. It is a rigorous nature. It is self-control. It is meekness. It is stoicism. It is being able to keep your passions at bay such that you can dictate your path. Not that others should lure you away or tempt you down a false road. Not so false prophets can fool you into following the Pied Piper's song of decadence and depravity that most of the world dances to, like marionettes on a string. But that path that you seek to blaze when you believe ultimately, if it's towards a material end, if it's towards a victory that leads you only to the esteem of your fellow man, that leads you only to the glory of the people, of the masses, if it leads you only towards riches and fame, if it leads you only towards trophies or championships or wealth, it will end up leaving you frustrated and anxious and bereft and without meaning. The only paths, the only journeys, the only mountains worth climbing, such that you have belief and vision from the very beginning that you can get there, that you should get there, and that you will get there, are for a cause greater than yourself, greater than your own flesh, greater than your own hedonism, greater than your own gluttony. When you truly believe that you will achieve something that will help, that will assist, that will raise up your fellow man, only then will you find hope and meaning and purpose. And greater than all of that, only when you do so in the name of the Supreme Elohim, only when you do so because you have faith in the Most High, only when you do so because you understand the singular commandment from which all prosperity blossoms from, to love Yahuwah, the Most High, the Supreme Elohim, He who breathes life, He who creates, He who brings all into existence with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Only then will you know that you can accomplish all, and only then, when you accomplish all, will it be to a meaningful end. An end that brings you peace, an end that brings you solace, an end that brings you love, an end that brings you joy, an end that brings you healing, and an end that brings you everlasting life without end. Imagine that. This is why Yahuwah, Yahusha, is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with the Most High. And the Word was the Most High. And the Word was made flesh. And Yahusha, the Most High who saves, the Most High who redeems, the Most High who redeems, is the Word, the beginning and the end and the beginning. And so, following on from everything that I've described here when it comes to faith and belief, for all those that need to see it happen first, for all those that need to have it proven to them first, for all those that never get anywhere in this life or the next because they need to touch it, smell it, feel it, grab a hold of it. It needs to be concrete before they ever stake a claim on it, before they ever put any skin in the game towards it, before they ever invest in it. You get left behind in every sense of the word, both in this life and in the next. It is clear that belief and faith brings about the ultimate truth, the ultimate glory, the true peace, the true solace, the true meaning, the true purpose of it all. And that goes for Yahuwah, Yahusha. For all of those who say, oh, I'm not going to believe until I see Yahuwah, Yahusha should show himself to me. You know, it's like those Pharisees, those lying hypocrites who worshipped with their lips and not with their hearts, who condemned Yahusha to death and watched him suffer on the cross while he was dying on that cross. They mocked him, saying, save yourself. Oh, how he saved others, but look how he cannot save himself. Prove that you are Hamashiach to us. Come off the stake. Come off the cross and show us that you could save yourself, such that that is what it would take for them to believe. Imagine the hubris, the conceit, the arrogance. Only then will you believe. The Most High must show himself to you in order for you to believe. You must show yourself to Yahuwah in order to receive belief, in order to receive salvation, in order to receive redemption. And here's the thing, Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with Yahuwah, and the Word was Yahuwah, and the Word was made flesh. And Yahusha, the Most High who saves, is the Word made flesh, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And when you show yourself in all faith and belief to Yahuwah, the end manifests. All is revealed to you. All is shown to you. You receive more than you could ever imagine. Everything that you wondered about, every question you had, answered. Answered to the degree that you have more revelations and more epiphanies than you can ever imagine. Everything makes sense. You finally see the zeros and ones behind it all. You stand here claiming that you need to have the answers to the questions before you believe. And every time you get one answer, another question appears. Every time you open one door, you find another door locked. Every time you climb to the top of one mountain, you find that you're at the bottom of another, and it never ends. The hamster wheel continues to turn, the treadmill continues to run, and you can never break free of chasing your own tail because it's endless. And it's not until you get off the treadmill, it's not until you get off the hamster wheel, it's not until you start with the end do you see the beginning. It's not until you start with what you were hoping the proof would lead you to, which is belief. But when you start with the end, when you start with the result, when you start with belief, you find the end you were looking for. All is revealed. Yahuwah, Yahusha delivers everything. All of the answers, all the revelations, all the epiphanies, and everything you've ever sought in the flesh but could never receive. True peace, true love, true joy, true healing, and everlasting life. And the Word floods you. The way, the truth, and the life becomes known. The path, the narrow path that leads to the narrow gates where the light is blinding and shines through. And as you walk that narrow path, because now you believe, now you have faith, now you've been saved, now you've been flooded with the Ruach, the breath of Yahuwah, which guides you on that narrow path, such that you can walk straight, true, and steadfast to those gates, to that bright light that shines right through the crack in that narrow gate that leads to the kingdom to come, where Yahuwah, Yahusha shall live amongst us once again. Where there will be no more doubt, where there will be no more pain, no more suffering, war or misery, hatred or sadness, evil or sin, no more decadence, depravity, defilement, debasement, no more evildoers, psychic vampires, negative influencers, no more haters, no more Hashatan, no more Satan, no more Lucifer. No. No more corrupters, evildoers, misleaders, deceivers. No more illness. No more disease. No more murder or death. No more war or misery. Just everlasting peace, everlasting joy, everlasting love, everlasting healing, and everlasting life. And where Yahusha has crushed all of the wrongs, crushed all of the evil, destroyed, wiped away all of the sin, washed us clean, purified, righteous, sanctified, and true. Paradise, Eden, new universe, new world, new earth, the kingdom to come. The peace, the solace, the joy, the healing, the love, the true life, the robustness, the dynamism, the vibrancy of it all, the beauty, the majesty, the glory of it all, indescribable, unimaginable, but you know it in your bones. You feel it in your heart. It's written on your DNA. You know, even though it's indescribable, you know what's to come, the beauty of it, to live face to face with Yahuwah, Yahusha, to have him walk amongst us once again such that we can love him, honor him, worship, glorify, and praise him in a manner that pleases him most, because we are perfect once again as we were when we were in Eden, before we were misled by the serpent, by the dragon, and became yoked to this illusion that misleads us, that deceives us, that fools us, this mirage that has us chasing our own tail, deluded to the degree that we must have the end first before we set out on the path from the very beginning. That we must see it before we believe it. The most amazing thing of all is that once you believe it, then you see it. And you will never unsee. Once you know, you will never unknow. And once you hear, you will never unhear. So let us believe, brothers and sisters. Let us have all faith such that we wear the armor of Yahuwah, such that we are impervious, impenetrable, impregnable to the spears, arrows, daggers, and weapons of the evil ones of this world that cannot touch us. The darkness cannot get near us. It is dissolved. It is obliterated as we walk on this straight, true, and narrow path to the narrow gates, to the light that shines behind it, to the kingdom to come. Because as we live and breathe with the Ruach, the set-apart spirit, the breath of Yahuwah that has been bestowed upon us, that lives inside us from our salvation, from our coming to Yahuwah, Yahusha, and asking for his redemption and receiving more than we could ever imagine. And that light, that beautiful light that lives within us, that shines on us and that emblazes and illuminates the path, the straight and narrow path that we now walk and are guided on like a compass pointing true north. Such is the Ruach, the breath of Yahuwah that lives within us and keeps us compelled on this narrow path, such that we walk it steadfast, unstoppable, unconquerable, undefeatable, unassailable, ceaseless, and relentless as we move with speed and grace like a juggernaut to kingdom come.